Invisible Soldiers podcast.
Welcome to the Invisible Soldiers podcast. I'm Corey.
I'm Rebecca.
Thank you for making us your go-to podcast for advertising stories through a cultural lens. This week, we're joined by a dynamic woman, a makeup artist with international roots, who has been a guiding light behind the scenes in the advertising world for years. Melvone Farrell, welcome to the podcast. Hey.
Hey, thank you.
Hey, lady, how are you?
I'm good, and how are you guys doing today?
Really good.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get you on for a while, and I'm glad we finally, our schedules all linked up and we were able to have this conversation because this is going to be a great conversation.
Oh, I'm so happy.
I think so too.
Yeah, seriously. Should be fun.
I love it. And just really quickly for our audience, how do you two know each other? Have you worked together in the past?
Yes,
Many
we
times.
have for quite a long time. We've known one another for quite a long time. I've worked on a few commercials with him, Toyota, over the past. I think I've known you, Corey, now for about maybe 15 years or longer, maybe. I'm not even sure.
Something like that. Yep.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, it's like time flies when you're having fun with your colleagues, yeah. But he's brought
So true.
in jobs, and I'm ever so grateful for him always entrusting me with the talent and the clients. And it's been a great privilege for me to be a part of his team. I'm truly honoured. And I have to tell you that, Corey, from the bottom of my heart. I sincerely mean.
Thank you. You always do great work. So that's why we keep coming back for sure.
Thank you.
I love it. Well, let's take it all the way back. I think for a lot of our viewers, we know we've met creative directors, writers, account people. We're just kind of getting into the production side of things, and having you on this show as a makeup artist, and I'm sure artist in general, would love to hear about your origin story. Take us back. Where are you from, and what was it like growing up there?
Well, I'm from London in England. I was born and raised in 56. My parents immigrated in 55. My parents come from very humble means. They're working class. My dad used to work on the London transport buses as a driver, and my mum was a factory worker. And we grew up in council flats, which we lived in. And it was really kind of like, it was interesting. It was hard. It was not easy, but it was good. The experience was good. We had lots of friends. It was in a mixed community. There were always lots of kids out and about on the streets. Not African American, a lot of Jamaican, African kids, because we don't call it African American. It's just African kids from all around the world. West Indians, Greeks, Turkish, Cypriots, British kids, we all sort of came together, and we played and we hung out. There was no separation in England. And I went to a regular school, secondary modern school. I finished school at 16. And when I was a young kid growing up, we used to watch TV, black and white TVs, and then that transitioned to colour, and sitting in my mum's house watching Muhammad Ali come on TV. That was the most amazing thing. And I was like, oh my God, there's black people on television. Wow. Because you didn't have that in England. You didn't have models or TV shows with black people. It was only in America that started, I believe, and it came to England. And then you'll see, and if you were into boxing like my dad was, and the fights or football or any kind of sport, you'd get that would travel across, the waters, and it was wow, I'd be sitting down with my sisters watching this guy fight, and then just add a bit of poetry to everything he said when he was interviewed. And I was like, oh my God, there's another world out there. And I literally couldn't believe that. I was like, I'm going to find that world one day. There's another world out there. I couldn't believe it. Even with Michael Jackson, seeing them, the Jackson 5, the whole thing was wow, there's black people on TV, fantastic. Let's go figure this out. Let's figure out where they all are coming from. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so thinking about how you were perceiving yourself and television and stars and entertainment, how did you find yourself in the career that you're in now?
Oh, that's a long journey. That was I left school at 16. I never went to college. I'll admit that. And I always wanted to be in the fashion industry. So fashion was my whole life. I lived, breathed it. And when my parents let me out of the house at 16, I went to the West End with some of my friends and went to these stores and saw these amazing clothes. And I was like, oh my God, look at all these beautiful, beautiful things. I want to be part of this. And then I heard about you can do modeling work, and that was great. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to become a model. I want to be just like everybody else. I want to be out there hanging out, wearing these great clothes. And there was one store in particular that I loved that was so ahead of their time. It was called Bieber. And it was all about black clothing, food, the way they sort of like advertised and represented themselves. It was very stylized, shoes, everything. And I literally had to go get a job at this place because I wanted to work there and be in this environment. And that was great because they were so ahead of their time. Even today, I can look back and think, wow, that was incredible time. And that was like late six, I'm 69, 70, you know?
Wow.
Crazy. So that sort of started me on the path of getting into fashion and doing stuff like that. And I joined an agency around when I was like 15. Nothing ever really happened because I was never like the right kind of person or the girl that they were looking for. Do you know what I mean? I never realized there was a certain style that they wanted, that pretty, like, light-skinned black girl with long hair, Iman on a lighter scale back then. It was really completely different. So I wasn't even aware of all that. I just thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to follow my dreams. I'm going to do what I want to do and have all that. And my parents, who are from Montserrat in the Caribbean, my dad actually had family living in New York and Massachusetts. And my dad turned around to us one day and said, you know what? My family's calling me to move over there and I'm going to move the whole family to America. So in 72, I think around that time, I'm off maybe a year or two, my dad packed up, went to America, went to Boston, Massachusetts, and we were there within 6 months. We got a visa to come into the country.
Wow.
Stopped doing everything. It was like, stopped. And I'm like, in one mind, I was like, this is great, but I'm going to leave all my friends. But this is exciting because this is where, Muhammad Ali and all these people are. They're all in America, so this might be a good thing, But once I got out there, it wasn't quite as I expected it would be. And because I had always had a mind of my own about doing things, I was always kind of like, I'm going to do this and this is how I'm going to do it. I decided I stayed there for a few years I stayed there for a few years in 72, 73, 74, sometime like that. We immigrated probably around 73. And then I left. I was there for about 2.5 years and then I left and I went back to England because I didn't like living in Boston. I didn't find it comfortable. I didn't like the environment. There was segregation that I never knew about. And I was like, what is going on here? What's wrong with these people? And then there was people calling us names and people laughing at the way I spoke, which was like, because I was really, really English and they never understood anything I said. I couldn't even get a job. And people would say, you know what, if you want to get a job here in America, you're going to have to learn how to speak properly. I'm like, what? I am talking properly. I don't know what's wrong. Like, what? I don't know, whatever. It was an interesting time. It was very, very interesting. And I ended up not staying. I was still trying to model. I just decided to move back to England. I just had to move back to England and I thought, what am I going to do? I wasn't really sure. So I was waiting tables at the time and I waited at tables for quite a long time. I actually worked in a club called The Venue, and it was Richard Branson's first nightclub. I was still modelling at the time, and Richard used to come down there quite a lot. It was in Victoria, and I made friends with another young lady, an American girl from Manhattan. Her name was Amelia Wallace. She went on to become quite a successful handbag designer with her sister later on in life. But during that time, we used to hang out together, and we, work the clubs, and there was all these amazing rock bands that would come in and play these amazing music and stuff. And at the time, I was still trying to model, do my whole thing. And Richard came in there one night, and he had on this amazing jumpsuit that I wanted. And I was like, "Hey, Richard, I've got a photo shoot next week. Can you lend me that jumpsuit?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, of course, you can borrow it whenever you want. You just got to come down to the boat where I am. I live on the water." And I went and got this jumpsuit, which was amazing, that he lent me. And I showed him the pictures, and he loved it. He was like, "Oh my God, you looked so amazing in that." This is just little specks of my life, which I didn't realise that came full circle later on. But during that time, I worked really, really hard. I couldn't get it off the ground doing, the modelling thing. And so I decided, you know what, this is too much hard work living back in England by myself. I'm going to go back to America. So I went on a plane, went back to America, and I went to my parents' home, stayed there for a couple of months, and then moved to Manhattan. And this was going towards late 70s, just before Studio 54 opened up. And all the things, and Madonna became famous, and all those things happened. A few friends of mine said to me, I was doing makeup on somebody one day, was just like messing around doing makeup. And they kept saying to me, "My God, you're really, really good. Have you thought about doing makeup?" And I said, "I don't know, really. Is there work for that thing?" "Yeah, you can get work. You can get into the film business. You can maybe work on a movie or something." And I thought, I'm not sure. I'm going to look into it a bit more. And so Debbie Mazar, I don't know if you know who she is. She's an actress that was Madonna's makeup artist at the time, that did a couple of Spike Lee's movies. She was in Spike Lee's movies, so she's one of those underground actors. We both started doing makeup, and I was literally still working in the restaurant business, and someone said to me, "You should go to Elite Modelling Agency." I said, "I don't want to model." "No, just go and see if you can test with their girls." Because at that time I'd quit the modelling thing. I obviously realised that was not happening for me. And so I went to Elite Modelling Agency, and I met two of the bookers there, and they sort of said to me, "What can we do for you? Because we're not hiring any models." And I said, "Well, I'm not looking for modelling work. I'm actually looking to work on your models because I want to become a makeup artist." And I had a really nice conversation. I don't know if it's because I was foreign or whatever it was, but they were really, really nice to me. And they said, "Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. We can take you on and see how you are with the girls. We get a lot of photographers looking to test our girls, and it will be great. Obviously, you're not going to make any money from this, right?" And I said, "Yeah, no, I get it." And so I started off with a very, very small kit. And they'd call me, or I'd check in with them every so often because we didn't have cell phones, obviously. And I'd reach out to them, and they would give me jobs and say, "Look, we've got a test coming up with such and such photographer on such and such a day. Are you available?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love it." And that's how I started doing makeup.
Wow.
So,
Was it like natural aptitude, or how does one get that skill set?
I used to look, because I was in fashion for such a long time and I was doing my own makeup, I started out with that. And then I went to the store and bought other things because at the time I wasn't working on any African-American girls. I was working on Caucasian girls, white girls, yeah? It was a whole different thing of how I went about getting into the industry. And everybody obviously is different. So I had to go and pick up a few products. And I bought a few products. And when I got some pictures back, I was horrified. I was like, "Oh my God, they are never going to hire me again. They're never going to let me work on them with their girls again." that was way too much blush. Oh my God. So I'm living and I'm learning and I'm testing, and I made the mistakes and I kept testing. And they took me under their wing and they kept working with me. I was very fortunate to have that. And 2.5 years I tested for free in New York. 2.5, almost 3 years. I worked at a restaurant called Mickey Ruskin's, One University, that at the time I didn't realize was one of the in places to work. It was all the major artists, painters and poets that lived there used to come in there. I used to wait on Andy Warhol. Yeah, he used to come to my table. I was always in the back on the Pac-Man machine. And those guys, the managers for Hogan and those guys are like, Melvone, we catch you on the machine again, you're fired. You know that. Andy's waiting at the table. He wants you now with the boys. Please get out there, yeah. All right, I'm going, yeah. What the hell? It's always on my back about something, yeah. And Andy was really lovely. He always treated me great, but he always came to my table. I always had certain people that come to my table. They thought I was like a cheeky, like, Black British girl that was like, I kind of like got away with murder, but still didn't even realise I was getting away with murder, yeah. And Andy would spend like about $35 on food and drinks with him and the boys and leave me a $30 tip. Back then, that was a lot of money. But he paid those guys with paintings, and he used to scribble on stuff for me.
Nice.
I don't own none of it. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this rubbish and shit? Yeah, like I'd throw it in the bin, like that. I don't know.
Oh man, Andy
Right?
Warhol's in the bin.
It was pretty bad. Barry used to come in there, Diane Brill. It was a whole scene. At the time, I didn't realise what it was until many years, and now in my life, realised where I was. And it was like what led me up to this position of where I am today. So I remember I worked in this restaurant for a few years, and then what happened was, we never forget the night John Lennon got shot. It was a massive attack. Like, we felt like there was a massive attack on America or whatever happened. And then when that happened, a year later, AIDS hit. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I'm leaving New York City. It's not for me. I'm going to go find my way now and try and find my career. And one of the only jobs before I go there was my first job in New York when I was still testing was the B-52s. So I got the opportunity to work with the B-52s, and I was...
Like Love Shack B-52s.
Why, my God, I'm working with the B-52s. How killer is that?
Was it a video or was it stills?
It was like a music video. It was like a video.
Okay.
They weren't into doing music videos, and it hadn't sort of like started. It was just like a creation of it. But it was like for a music video, obviously I made probably no money. I can't remember how much it was back then. But it just the whole idea of working with them back then was like brilliant, yeah. But to come again, so I left New York and went back to Europe because everybody said, you need to get a book together. You're never going to get hired or taken seriously until you get a portfolio of stuff that has been published. And if you want to do editorial, beauty and stuff like that, you have to go back to Europe. It's the only place that you will get that work a lot quicker than being in New York. I thought, all right then, that's what I'm going to have to do. So I literally, after AIDS hit, it was almost like a sign for me, time to leave. Okay, I'm out of here. And I booked a one-way ticket to Hamburg. And I had 3 names. I had 3 photographers' names. One, Michael Summeroff. Another one was a German guy, Klaus something or another, I can't remember. And then another person said to me, you've got to look into, there's an agency that takes people on, you've got to look into them, but you'll get a lot of catalogue work and you can just go. At this time, I only had a few pictures of Tess with this big portfolio that I had under my arm. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know, a couple of pictures, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But the first place I went to, I went to Hamburg. I went there for 1 year to stay. I stayed there for almost 5 years. Yeah.
Now, when you went to seek out this work,
Yeah.
did you just show up? Like, do you just show up at these places and say, hi, this is my work?
Oh, it didn't work out like that. First of all, I got a place to stay. And then I'd met a couple of people that were visiting from New Zealand. So I was hanging out with them for a bit. I was just trying to get my bearings and to figure out what's going on. And to also watch my money, because I didn't have that much money. So I had plans just to go for a few weeks, for a few months. I wasn't going to stay that long. But then I ended up, the one number that I did have was this photographer by the name of Michael Sumoff, an American guy from New York City, that shot a lot of still stuff, but also shot a lot of catalogue as well. And I went to see him. I'll never forget it. I went to see him, and he was the one that gave me my first job. He gave me my first job. And it was literally a few weeks later. I showed him my book, and he goes, well, you don't really have very much. I said, I know, but I'm here, and I'm a good worker, and I can definitely deliver. And there was something about the relationship we had that went down well. It was okay. And then I was hanging out with him, and then I ended up meeting a good friend that I ended up sharing a place with, which became my partner for about 5 years, German guy. So we lived together, and he really supported me because he was a still life stylist. So he worked with Michael too, and we always worked together. And so he helped me find my way in Hamburg a lot and to go to the photographers that I needed to go to. So because I needed help. And then I joined an agency at the time that got me work. And it wasn't very much. I still got kept back. Like I'd get something once every couple of months. I'd get a photo shoot or a catalogue job, and it wasn't anything that I can use. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere. This is not getting me anywhere. Do you know what I mean? What am I going to do with this? And then Uli would say to me, well, you've been speaking about Italy and Paris. Don't you think it's maybe time for you to start going and looking at these places?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but how am I going to? Don't worry, we'll make it work. Let's just get you there and we'll make it work. And he had friends, a German woman that was married to an Italian guy in Milano. And I went to Milano. The first year I went to Milano, I stayed in a pensione. And then I joined an agency called Marcella Agency. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't even know if they're still around. But they had models, and they had hair and makeup people, and they had stylists. And it was one umbrella agency that had all these people. And then there was another couple of agencies that just had models. But someone had said to me, you need to go check out Marcella. And I actually got in with Marcella. So I was very, very fortunate to do that. That wasn't easy either. That was no feat. But I got in with this agency. And from there, I started to get the little bit of editorial I needed. But it didn't come like that. There was also a group of other photographers and models and people that were there for all the same thing. And they were all from the States. They came from the States. There was a few of us from England, but they all came from the States. This is where everybody came together to try and create these beautiful images for their books or for their reels so they can take back to the States or back to England or back to wherever they were going that they wanted to reside in for their career. Mine, on the other hand, was I wanted to get this together because I wanted to go back to England to work. I wasn't thinking about going back to America. That was never a plan to go back to New York or go back to living in Massachusetts where my parents and my sisters were living. So I worked there for a couple of months, and then I left and went back to Germany to continue getting some money jobs to help me because there was never no money. You'd make probably like maybe £60. I don't even know what that is in dollars now, like for one editorial job. They paid you no money, but it was the pictures spoke 1,000 words, you know. And I became friends with one particular photographer that I don't know if you've heard of him, Corey, by the name of Harris Savides. He became a huge cameraman in the film industry here, like huge. Okay. He came back, he left, and he came back, and he ended up switching from photography to becoming a cameraman. And I ran into him. That's another story years later when I came to California. So going back, I left Milano, went back home to Germany, came for 3 years in a row just to build up my book and to get it to where it looked, and stayed 6 months here, left, went back, did a little time in Paris. Paris I hated because I just never liked the way they treated me or Black people in periods. I was like, I'm not staying here. I don't like these people, French people, I'm not dealing with them. And I went back to Hamburg, where was my base. So that was going to be 1 year turned into 5 years. And my book was fairly strong enough that I knew I could get work in London now. I wasn't thinking about New York. I was thinking about London. And what I wanted to get in London was editorial. I wanted Condé Nast. I wanted Vogue House. I wanted all the other magazines that were there. I wanted all the magazines that said something or had some sort of reference to you're now on the map, you know? Mm-hmm. So I ended up leaving Hamburg after 5 years, and I moved back to London. And I got an agency by the name, my agent was Mandy Coakley. Now, I can't even give you years because I'd have to like jot down and go back into my brain of how is all this working. And I joined this agency, Mandy Coakley, and she took me on, and I got my first music video was with Lisa Stansfield.
Been Around the World?
Yeah, that was my first. Yeah.
Jam.
I literally, when I joined it, because she loved what I had and she was ready to promote me. She was a very strong Leo woman. Yeah. And I felt like I was in good hands, and that's where my other connections started to spread out and come together and all these other things.
I'm thinking that's like roughly what, 88, 89, somewhere in there?
That is...
Maybe 90?
No, 90 I was in LA. We're talking 87, 88, 89, sometime around then.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was one. And then I got another one. Simply Red, Mick Hucknall was another music video I did.
Fan. Yeah.
Who I love. I got a few more after that. I'm trying to remember which ones there were now. But I was starting to do music videos, but before I was starting to do the music videos, I was getting editorial. So I used to work for a magazine, company magazine. And then I really loved it because I started to get covers, because you get the fashion stuff, which is great. If you get a cover, that says the whole story. So developing my skill, all of that was always still in development. You're always developing it. And then I got to work with some amazing models like Susie Bick, you know, like one of the greatest models that came out of London that I worked with, and Amanda de Cadenet, and those are some of the great models. It was always about, for me, it was always about the fashion, the beauty, the makeup, the fashion, the beauty. Even though it was just me doing the beauty, it was all about the whole story. It was about story, working with those photographers and getting that end result, that thing on a canvas. It was the whole art form. I didn't care that I was only making 50 quid a day. I was always broke, never had no money. But it was about the art form, and that's the thing. And that was the passion that pushed me, was about that art form on that piece of paper that I got, which was for me my recognition, you know. And then I took it from there, and I ended up, I was always broke. And I kept saying, there's got to be a different way. There's got to be a different, I need to, like, there's all these people getting these campaigns. I can't get a campaign, you know, like, they're not hiring me for a campaign. I'm still getting these small jobs. And I'm like, something's got to give here. This is not even, like, funny, yeah. And then one day I spoke to a friend of mine on the phone. I was like, hey, an old friend of mine from New York that I used to hang out with when I was living back here in the 70s. And she's like, I don't see what you're doing in London. Why don't you come to LA? I said, LA? LA what? Why? There's so much work in LA, Melvone. You've got to come to LA. I says, I don't know about that. I've got my flat here. I don't know if I'm going to be there. Just come for a couple of months. All you need is a couple of months. 30-something years later, right? Yeah.
So tell me this. Can you talk about when you made the breakthrough from print into actual shooting commercials?
Okay, so that happened basically, it started in London. So I had the experience of doing commercials, but I also had a print book. So when I came to LA, she talked me into it. I came out. I was only coming for a few months. And I was told there was a couple of agencies to go see. There was Cloutier and Celestine. And they said Cloutier was much higher end, but Celestine is much more easy to take on new people. But, you know, you're not going to find too many of us in that kind of agency. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go anyway, whatever. So I went to Celestine agency. I had an appointment, went to see them. They looked at my book, and I'll never forget this. They looked at my book. They looked at me. They looked at my book. They looked at me. They looked at my book, and they said, did you do all this work? And I said, yeah, because it was all on white girls. I didn't have one black girl, not one. And they were like, you did? I said, yeah, I did. This is all my work. Okay, well, we'd like to take you on. And I was like, oh, great, that's fantastic. Still not understanding all the stuff that goes behind. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I literally joined them, like literally 5 days later or less than that, I was booked to do a music video, making $800 a day. And I was like, I'm going to make how much money did you say? $800 a day.
So if you were one of the only, maybe the only black artist in that agency, it sounds like, what was it like going on any set? Were you seeing any other, black artists, black talent? I mean, most of your book is all, white talent. When are you starting to see other black people in this environment?
Later on. It wasn't in the beginning. I didn't see, there was hardly any other black working production people. You're talking, right? In production?
Anybody.
No, I was literally basically normally the only one. I'm not going to lie to you. And I think they might have had a PA that was black or something, but if I have to go back, I was normally the only one. When I started, I thought it was great. Wow, I'm working. But I didn't realize there was so many layers of political stuff behind it, not knowing or coming from that place. Do you know what I mean? I already had a place that I knew stuff was already holding me back, and I wanted to get out of it and branch out. And I thought, because I had a good book, coming to LA might get me to the next level. But it did. It got me up there, but it brought me back down again.
Yeah.
So
when you finally started working on black talent on set,
that was really hard. I couldn't get that. I wasn't getting it. I couldn't get it.
But I'm saying, but when you finally did, let's go to the moment when you finally broke through and you start working with black talent. Black talent is now on set. The products, right? The products they didn't exist, did they? Because I remember there was a time when, we would joke about, you would see people on TV and you would see the neckline where
Right,
their real skin color,
right.
came in, and then they up here looking like they were in a
I
casket,
made my.
either too dark or too light.
Never happened to me. Never, ever, ever.
What did you do? What was your
Because
workaround?
I made my own shades. I made my
Mm.
own. From it went back even back into England. It went back in England when I started out. Even for white skin back then, the shades were wrong. Yeah, and there was a cosmetic line that used to carry that I would buy a liquid that would change the shading of the foundation so you can make your own. So what I used to do was make my own to match the skin tone. That's what I did. And I carried that all the way through to dark skin when I started
Wow.
to work with them. So that was my way of doing what I had to do. Once you figured out how you can make that correct it, and you can do that, then you work with what you have. I've always mixed my colours, always, until you don't need it anymore because there's every colour of the rainbow out there now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Even with my
And then what about like you're moving in around LA. What about a network of other black artists? Are there any other black, makeup artists that you are meeting that, you know, a tribe of people who can support you, or even maybe a mentor in that at all?
what during that time,
Yeah.
but back then, you're talking.
Yeah, just at some point when you were coming through, was there a point where, or what was the point when you met like that tribe of other black makeup artists? Because I know,
I met them when
you were in the
I met them when I came to Los Angeles, and I'd be working on some music videos, and there were other people, and at the agency, or not, and they weren't African American really that I met at the agency, but I met them later on jobs, like if I was doing music videos and about definitely on commercials as well, not commercials so much, but music videos for sure. I met them. Coquita Douglas was one. I've been friends with her since before my son was born. Yeah. And other artists that I met. But a lot of those other artists too that I met, they were more into TV shows and
Okay.
film.
Okay.
I was always in commercials. And
So there was really nobody that you were getting pit against, if you know what I mean, right? Like
no.
when okay.
I
Okay.
wasn't getting pit against. When I was with the agency, I was getting pit against just to get the jobs, because most of the time it was the white girls or the white boys that would get the jobs, even if they were black talent. And I wasn't even getting black talent. They weren't even giving me black talent. I tried to go see clients that were African American, and I'd say, I would love to work with this talent that was African American or other African Americans. They would not give me the job because I didn't have enough African American in my book. It was all white. I had maybe one or two African American in my book when I came to LA. They would not give me. I couldn't get hires.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was both sides of it. I couldn't get hired from African Americans to do African American, which was something that I basically always wanted to do, but I did white people because that's what the market was geared to back in England. Yeah. So that's what I did. And then when I came to LA and I wanted to get into that, I thought, I can get into that. I got into that work. I wasn't getting that work anyway. I had to go with another agency called Crystal Wright before I started getting that work. And she would have to sell me like hotcakes. No, I know she hasn't got that in her book, but she's good and she's amazing. British, black girl that's from London that can do this work. Trust me, she's amazing. You'll love her. Just give her a chance. She can work with African American skin, because I don't know where it was going. I think African Americans I think white people would do it, African Americans. And even if there were African American makeup people around, it wasn't like we were always getting them. Do you know what I mean? It was like the producers or the directors would have their friend come in and they'd get that job. Do you know what I mean? That nepotism of whatever. I wasn't getting that job. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's similar in our world, where even in the I started in advertising in the late 90s, and it was mostly general market or white advertisements. And then, you'd get like the one spin-off. And if it was really black, then they would give it to the one black creative. But all the other times they would absolutely staff it with someone who wasn't black. It's so interesting to hear, that you built your book and had to chase a career that was not a reflection of who you are, and then the desire to then go be a part of who we are, to also find roadblocks there.
So much roadblock. I couldn't even believe it. I was kind of boggled by it. And I literally would be I would go on a go-see, and I'd go in there making sure that I've got not too much makeup on, that they look at me and realise I've got something on that I can figure out that I'm, then I know that I know what I'm doing, and I still couldn't get the job. And then one day it just sort of like all changed. And then I had quite a few agents, actually. I had quite a few different agents, because I thought, if you can't get me something within a year, I'm leaving you, I'm going to go. And I would get different types of work. But it wasn't like I was getting a lot of African-American work. I had to build that up. I had to build that up to get the clients to give me that work. And then came the other side of it. I was getting hired to do white girls, white guys. I'd get that. But I had to work to get that again. So I was up here when I came in, but it pulled me all the way back here later on. Because once you left your agency or whatever and you decide to do it on your own, you are now going out to sell yourself, which I thought I was better at doing it myself. When I can represent myself to sell myself and say, look, I can do this work. You've just got to trust me. I know this work like the back of my hands. I know clients. I know what they want. I know exactly what they're going to ask for. Yeah, I've eaten it. I've lived it, breathed it, eaten it. I know exactly. Trust me, without using those words. Do you know what I mean? But then there's something else that comes into play, like somebody's friend or whatever. It took many years. Even though I've been here since 1990, it took me many years to develop a reputation and to develop the respect, not just from my peers, but from colleagues and people that are in our industry, to work where I've got my phone ringing. Oh, I'm booked for the next 18 days on different projects, where I was just working maybe 2-3 days out of the month for many years. It's not something that happened right away for me. It happened is even up until recently, the last maybe 8 years, that I have started to get like, I can run now. I don't have to walk or to trot. I can literally.
Yeah.
I now have a reputation. They now see me. Yeah. They now
Question for
what I can deliver.
Question for you about how you built your portfolio and your journey. If you were speaking to another young Black woman from across the world, and she or he or they were interested, thinking about colorism, even in advertising, we still see it. It's not equitable, especially as I feel like marketers are pulling back on what they refer to as DEI, and I'm sure that will affect casting and all of that. What would you tell them? How would you tell them to build their book? Would you tell them to build their book with mostly white models? Like what's your recommendation at this point in history? Like what should that look like if you're presenting yourself?
I would tell them to build it with every different type of race that they can. Their own, number one. White girls too, Asian, Latinos, every race. If you can get that, do it. Just show people that you can do it all. You're not just one little thing. You can do not just one thing that you can do. You can do all of it. And you test as much as you can. You find a handful of good photographers that needs to test, because photographers need hair and makeup people now. You might not always going to get paid right away, but you start testing until you develop your skill, like you know exactly what you're doing, and you assist. If you can try and assist a makeup person who might not be a union person in film or television, might be print or something, you can go and assist just to watch how they operate a room with clients. That is really, really important to know how to operate a room with clients and know how they think. You've got to be able to think before they think, but think what they're thinking so you can deliver it. Like if someone says to you, I know for me, I know what clients want. And if someone says to me, well, let's go and ask the client. No. I don't need to ask the client. I know what they want. If I'm wrong, they're going to tell me. But if I give them what they want, then I know they want it because they're not going to say anything. They're going to say, oh, that looks amazing. That's when you know that you knew what they wanted and you've given it to them what they've wanted, what they want, you know. So it's been able to understand and to go into a room and be in that space and understand what it is your client wants, not just the client, your client, the director, everybody together that works together as a team. Yeah.
Obviously, race has played a really important role in your story. More recently in Hollywood, there's been a lot of talk about the Black British invasion, right? Like, especially with a lot of the big movies, a lot of the actors getting a lot of the big jobs. So I'm wondering, do you think being Black and British has had any advantages throughout your career, especially when you came to the States, being in LA?
Well, I think there's elements of that. I think they took a chance. Sometimes they took a chance on me because I was not from here. And they kind of like the fact that I was from somewhere else. It doesn't mean that I'm actually going to get the job over somebody else that's from here, that's got a book that's stronger than mine. They're going to give it to that person. I think everything plays a part when it comes to where you're from or where you're going or where you are at that time anywhere in the world based on what you're doing. So either that works for that person or that works for somebody else. Everybody's story and everybody's journey is completely different. And they can call it a Black invasion, but I think everything is circular, you know. I started out somewhere else and I ended up here. Somebody else from here that can start out here might end up over there and create a story and a blow up that can turn this world upside down in our business. Everything is circular. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. As one would say, it's one big friggin' melting pot. That's what it is. It doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, cool. Uh, any last words for the next generation? I know you sometimes show up to set with assistants. Or are you doing anything to, like, help bring in that next Melvone, into the industry?
Yeah, I watch all these young, amazing, talented, up and coming makeup people and hair people, and I am there. I will like to stay here as a voice for them. So there's a few young ones that are up and coming that I know are going to supersede even me in so many different ways. And they come to me sometimes with questions, or if I have an answer, how do I handle this situation? How would you maneuver yourself? And I like to advise what I would do. So just dig deep into your heart of what you would do. But my thought always is for them is like, never feel that anyone can stop you from doing whatever you want to do. You can do it all. Don't let anything stop you. Just try and do it in the right way. Just always be conscious of others, and others really will be conscious of you. You just got to project it.
Well, thank you for your time. This has been amazing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Invisible Soldiers podcast. Do us a favor, subscribe to the show everywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Peace.